If you close your playground and reopen Xcode, you will get this screen again. This time we are going to use the Create New Xcode Project button. You'll see here that there's lots of different templates you can use for your new project. They're split into groups of iOS and OS X. You'll notice both iOS and OS X have a game option. We'll go over how to do a cross-platform project later, but for now let's use an iOS game. Here's where you can enter the details of your new project. For product name, let's just give it 200A3 for now. You can name your product whatever you would like to for this lesson. The product name can be changed at any time, so don't worry if you don't give it the name you want your product to have. Organization name, if you have a company, put that in. If you have a LLC, put that in. Otherwise, just use your name. Organization identifier, this is normally your website address in reverse syntax. So I'm using com.websitename and leaving it at that. This is so that your product's bundle ID is going to be unique. The bundle ID is made up of your organization identifier and the product name. For language, we're going to be using Swift. For game technology, SpriteKit. Devices, we'll leave it at universal, so this will work on both iPhone and iPads. When you're ready, click Next. Choose the location you wish for your project to be saved. You might not get this message if this is your first Xcode project. If you do, just click Allow. And congratulations, this is your first Xcode project. And this is the screen you'll see every time you create a new project. This can be pretty daunting to look at first, but don't worry, it's not as scary as it looks, and we're going to run through it all quickly right now. Starting from the top, you have the Build and Run button, and next to that is the Stop button. This allows you to run your application on a device or simulator. And also, this is how you stop it from running on a device or simulator. Now you're probably wondering, how do you choose which device you would like it to run on? That is done next to these buttons in the Scheme menu. You can select from any devices connected or any iOS simulators that are available. If we were doing a Mac project, then you'll see that you'll be able to run this on your Mac as well. In a cross-platform project, you will see two schemes here, one for iOS and one for Mac. This next box is the status window. You'll be able to see here if your project is currently building or anything else that you need to see the status for. This first set of three buttons affects what you see in the middle here. The first option is for a single window. The second option opens up an assistant editor where you can see two files at once. The third option is for version control, so you can compare the current version with a previous version of that file. These next three buttons expand and retract the side panels and the bottom panel. So just to go over these panels quickly, the left one allows you to select files or project information, and whatever you have selected is what you'll see in the middle window of the screen. All of these files make up your project. This bottom area is mostly going to be used for debugging. If you do a print line statement somewhere in your code, then when that code is run, you'll see that appear down here. And this works whether you're using the simulator or an actual device. On the right side, you can see document information about whatever file you have currently open. So this area and the tabs in this area will be dependent on what file you have open in the middle of the screen. Below that, there are a few little helper things, such as media access, class templates, code snippets, and visual objects. So let's close down all these except for the left one and select on the project. Now because we selected game as our template, we don't need to change too much in this project, but I would like to turn off portrait orientation. It's good practice with games to select either landscape or portrait for your game. There are some games that will work in both portrait and landscape really well. For the majority of the games you'll be making, picking either portrait or landscape will be better. Now if you have a look at some of these files, the app delegate is something you probably won't be using too much to create your games at first. It's mostly used for when the state of your application changes. So if it enters the background and you want it to save some data before it disappears, then this is the place to do it. It's also good to be able to pause your game when it enters the background. This SKS file is part of the new Scene Kit editor. This allows you to add nodes to the scene visually. We aren't going to be using this in these lessons, but there are some games where you'll find this very useful. The game scene, so you know what a scene is. Scenes are generally generated from one of these class files. And what this contains is all the code that relates to the scene that you're running. The game view controller, when your game launches, it will display its origin view controller. In this case, it will be this game view controller. So this is the place where you'll create your view and then add your first scene to it. So this is really the starting blocks for your application. So if I build and run now, you can see that there's a sample application in this template. What it does is it adds text to the middle of the screen, and when you click, it creates a sprite, and it starts that sprite spinning. So even though we haven't gone over any of this stuff yet, you should be able to look through this game scene and see what it's doing. You can see that when the scene moves to the view, it is going to create a label with this font, this text, this font size, and at this position. And it's going to add that to the scene. Down further in this touches began function, you can see that every time that it touches somewhere on the screen, we find the location of that touch, create a SK sprite node object, scale it down to half its size, move it to the position of the touch, then use an action to start it rotating. You're then running the action on the sprite and adding the sprite to the scene. This is a lot to take in right now, but don't worry, we haven't gone over any of this code yet. So if it's all foreign to you, that's okay. Now what I want you to do next is just clean this project up a bit so that over the following lessons you'll have a nice clean workspace where you can add your code. So I'm just going to grab all the files that we're not going to be using and move them into the supporting files folder, just so that they're out of the way and you won't have to worry about them. Now I have attached some text to this lesson for you. This text can be pasted into the game view controller, and you can use it as a template in any of your other projects as well. The template that Apple provided here have a lot of extra stuff which we aren't going to be using in these lessons. So once that is posted in, you can see by looking down here that we are creating a scene, we are grabbing the current view and using it as our SK view. We're telling it to show us the frames per second and the current node count. We're saying ignore sibling order. Later on you're going to be learning about something called Z position. And what the sibling order affects is the Z position of your nodes. The scene scale mode is set to aspect fill, so it's going to fill the available space. So you can see the size we set for this scene is the same size as an iPad screen. So this will fit neatly on an iPad, but an iPhone, the bottom and top of the screen will be trimmed off. The other big change here is for its supported interface orientations, I'm telling it only to support landscape. And this has to be done as well as what we did in the project area earlier where we unticked portrait. I know it seems silly, but we have to do it twice. Okay, so now you can build and run, and everything still works. Fantastic. Now if you come up to your game scene, you can take out all of this extra code so that you're all ready to go in the next lesson. And from now on we're going to be using projects and not the playground. The playground is a great place for prototyping new projects though, so don't feel that you have to get rid of it entirely. You can keep using the playground to test things out.